Hey guys, Scott Fishman here. Today we have a great guest. He is the MLW Heavyweight Champion. What better timing to have him on because he has a really big matchup coming up on March the 21st on MLW Underground, an opponent he knows very well. Alexander Hammerstone, how are you today?
Doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm good. What I, love about what's going on in wrestling these days, is, lengthy title reigns and stories that are playing out over time. MLW's generated that for so long. Your feud with Jacob Fatu is proof of that. I mean, a lot of it was down to the pandemic, but also, you still managed to continue that. Talk about just, in today's business, where there's constant content all the time, but you're still able to kind of maintain these big fights and the build that can go on because fans are still invested.
Yeah, I mean, we live in the ADD era, where first it was Vine and now it's TikTok, and people have their streaming services. If something doesn't catch their attention in the first 2 minutes, they're changing the channel and watching something new. And I know for myself, one of my number one habits is scrolling YouTube late at night and clicking from video to video to video. And the next thing you know, you're watching a video on like how mouse traps were made, and you're just like, how did I even get here? You know, but we just, we kind of want that constant, like, oh, what's new? What's catching my attention now? And there's sometimes a pressure to, satisfy that in professional wrestling. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Because there's something to be said for, striking when the iron is hot. But there's something to be said for trying to squeeze too much juice from the fruit, and then it's next thing you know, it's all dried up. So if you do have characters that people are invested in and big fights that people are invested in, and if you're able to create these stories that can separate and come back together and separate and come back together, those are going to be what pay off the biggest. They might not pay off right away, and that's the thing. Um, it's like we could have gotten a spike in views several times if we just fired off myself and Jacob Fatu, but we would have killed it. We would like I beat him for the World Heavyweight Championship, what, a year and a half ago, and we're just now having our first singles rematch, and I think that says something because if we would have, come back to a rematch the month after, and then the month after that, and a gimmick, and it would be a dead feud, and people would not want to. People would not still have that interest maintained into it, and it's like it could be an easy bump in ratings or an easy bump in ticket sales, but to take people on the slow burn and let us develop ourselves as wrestlers, now the payoff is going to be huge because now people have no idea what to expect except they know it's going to deliver.
For sure. And talk about just, in the past year, I think this time last year, I just remember videos airing about your story and how you got involved in wrestling and things like that. How is it kind of being able for you to kind of show the other layers beyond just being this big guy, to show that you're not one dimensional, that, you have this personality and you have other elements of yourself that people can really relate to?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey in professional wrestling because, I've been doing this for over 10 years now. And when you first get in, you know, you're in training school and say, what's your character? What's your gimmick? What's your shtick? You're like, what's my catchphrase? What's my music? What's my logo? What's this? What's that? And you're trying to portray something. And the trap that a lot of people fall into is trying to portray something that they're not. And sometimes that they really aren't. And you know, I always gravitated towards something that was always somewhat real to me. Things that were somewhat based in reality and based in, authenticity. But there was, over the years, it was kind of like this. You're peeling back the layers of the onion until there's not anything left except me. That's all that was left. Was it was just like I'm a guy. I'm a guy who's a professional wrestler. I'm an athlete. I like to spend time with my dog and my girlfriend. I like to play my music. I like to bodybuild. Here's who I am. This isn't some shtick. And so to be able to realize that over the years, as things got less and less, over the top and less kind of theatrical, for lack of a better word, is when people started connecting to me more and more, and my popularity grew. People started gravitating towards something because they sensed more authenticity. It was, to connect with a human being is always going to be a lot more than to connect with a character. So it's like you could say Harry Potter's, your favorite, wizard, but it's like he's not someone you care about. You don't care about what happens to Harry Potter because it's not real. But you can care about what happens to Alexander Hammerstone because you know who I am as a person, as a human being, not just, what moves I do and how many different versions of a power bomb I know. So it's been really cool to kind of show that to the world and to have it be received mostly well. Obviously, there's always going to be people who, hate you no matter what you do, and I'm okay with that.
Even the
Um,
one time you wear red and yellow, right?
oh man, and it was funny. I got a message about that today. Like, I think you shouldn't have reacted to him. You kind of overreacted. I'm like, this guy, his Twitter claims that he's like a wrestling journalist, and he saw me, like, I guarantee he's never watched one of my matches. Like, but it's like he saw a picture of me wearing red and yellow, and he goes, "I don't like Hulk Hogan," and this guy dressed kind of similar to Hulk Hogan, so that means he's a Hulk Hogan copycat, which means he's not good at wrestling, and I don't like him. And now, as a wrestling journalist, I'm going to talk about how he's a Hulk Hogan copycat and not good at wrestling. And it's like, cool. It's like, but there's always going to be people like that. But it's just what it is, and I approach it now as how I do. Like, I approach it as me as a person. Like, how am I going to deal with you? How I see fit. How am I going to joke and jest with you? How I see fit. And some people are going to like it. Some people are going to hate it.
Yep. It's amazing to think what 4 years ago, arriving on the scene with MJF and Richard Holiday and yourself as the Dynasty, and just seeing how far you're coming. MJF is a world champion at AEW. You're a champion. And then Richard Holiday, he grew so much, had match with you last year. Talk a little bit, just put in perspective, just how is it for you to kind of see, always when you're first starting out, there's always this bond that will always be there because you're pushing each other, and now you're kind of at these higher levels. And when you're seeing, Richard just kind of come back from cancer and just battle, that's so inspiring, I think, on so many levels. And you being close to him, kind of, I'm sure you feel that too. So, as talk about the bond that you guys had shared and maybe still do to this day, and how do you kind of reflect on those years and the years since, now that you guys are, in the spots that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think when the dynasty first formed, we were kind of a little bit strangers with each other, but we became really close really fast. And I think in pro wrestling, no matter if people want to pretend it's not there or not, there's always kind of this sense of like you're sharks in the water, right? And you want to eat, and it's like if you're in a group, you want to be the breakout star. Um, but it's like with the dynasty, we really start realizing, like, man, like all three of these guys are breakout stars. Like Max is a star, Richard is a star. I have faith in myself to become a star. So it's like we kind of like let our egos by the wayside really quick because it's just like we aren't competing with each other. Like we are going to go and grab the brass rings we're gonna grab. So we really just like kind of let our guards down in that sense and just enjoyed working with each other. And I know for myself, like I learned so much from both those guys, and just really grew as a performer because up until that point in my career, I had kind of not done almost anything with kind of a comedic element to it. Everything I had done had been really straight laced. I'm an ass kicker type stuff. And then it's like with the dynasty, we're going to donkey shows in Mexico and, smuggling illegal steroids across the border and like all these goofy things. And to be able to kind of break out this new version of myself and circling back to what we talked to earlier in the conversation, kind of just be more of myself. Those guys really taught me how to do that and how to present that in a way that came across entertaining on television.
It's just amazing when you see like an MJF, just he's such dedication to himself as an individual, and that's a lot of it is himself. So seeing some how would you say he is when we're not on the camera? You see a lot of the same that we're seeing on camera now?
You see a lot of the same. That being said, I think he's a guy who's surrounded by a lot of people who, think he's like a magic lamp bottle that they got to rub and get a wish from the genie. It's like, how sick of that would you get? Like to be surrounded by people who just constantly are trying to get something from you or get a rub off of you. But for the dynasty, there was none of that. We weren't trying to get a rub off of Max, so we were just working together and enjoying ourselves. And he was very generous in a lot of ways to both of us, because he had no fear of being undercut, or like he knew he was going to be successful. So to sit there and to help us, and like myself and Max, we had a singles match in MLW to this day, it's one of my favorite matches. And there was no part of him that went into that match only trying to make it the MJF show. It was very much an entertaining match for both of us, that elevated both of us. So there's a lot more to Max than some people realize, but he also, that being said, the MJF character isn't just a character. That's Max for you.
What do you make of Richard, his comeback story? I just love that, seeing him and maintaining his attitude, and it seems like it has such a good outlook on everything.
Yeah, he so there was a couple months there where we were going through like him, getting tests and trying to figure out what was going on and all that, and I just remember the day when he called me and he told me he had cancer, and it was like I got hit with a brick, but he was just like so matter of fact. Yeah, this is what's going on. I asked them, we're going to start treatment. We're going to do, we're going to start what's the radiation treatment called?
Chemo?
We're going to start the chemo treatments at this time. It's going to be about 6 months of this. I'm going to do this and do that. And he's just like, he had his game plan. He was just like, yeah, like, so it's like for a lot of people that would just crush them. But for him, it was just like another thing in life that he was like, okay, I have to get to this. And especially like coming off, he had already dealt with some personal things this year, like he had already dealt with, his own battles, his own loss, his own this and that. So it's like, it's really a testament to how strong of a person he is and how strong-willed he is. And it's going to be really exciting to see what he does in the wrestling world on the other side of this.
Mm-hmm. One thing you brought up earlier, and I just think it's incredible when I see this, is just your bodybuilding and the dedication that takes too, let alone wrestling. And because you're always, when you're on the road, you're worrying about what you're eating and just keeping your body, physically in shape. And then, but at the same time, you have this second career that you're building, or the second interest that you're kind of cultivating. And then you see the photos you post on Instagram, and they're so impressive. Just talk about just the dedication it takes. I mean, you see a Jordan Grace and you see others who have are doing that right now, but I just think it's incredible to see. So talk about just the passion and just why now, and just kind of what you've gained from the experience of juggling both.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like I kind of started lifting weights and working out with this obsession of wrestling. I talked recently on a interview about how like seeing like John Cena workout videos kind of got me back into wrestling. And then I was like always thinking like, if I want to be a wrestler, I got to be big, because I was a scrawny little kid, scrawny all throughout high school. So I started really hitting the weights hard, and then you kind of, for people who get the weightlifting bug, it's a lot more than just like, oh, I like lift weight, get big muscle. It's for a lot of people like such as myself, it's the first time in my life where I started seeing like putting work into something and getting results back. And it didn't matter if I was poor. It didn't matter if someone was mean to me. It didn't matter if someone said I couldn't do it. It was happening, And then you start to develop this mental discipline, and you start to realize like, hey, I'm a capable human being. And you put that into other things, and you get the confidence to go to wrestling school and try to become a wrestler, and all these things. So it's always been a love of mine. But it's always been secondary to professional wrestling. That being said, it's just something to test myself a little bit more every once in a while. Like, if I have an opening in my schedule and there's a bodybuilding competition, it's like, what if what if I could just diet down a little bit more, get a little bit more shredded, see what it's like. I like to test myself. I like to push my physical limits, and wrestling does that. But bodybuilding is just a whole different outlet, a whole nother level. And this time around, it was just that I had a lot of big matches coming up, a lot of big stuff with MLW. So I was doing a lot of cardio because there were times in my career where that was my downfall. Was I was big, I was strong, I was powerful, but I would gas out. So I've always, ever since I kind of got that kick in the ass a couple years ago, I've been really adamant about my cardio routine. But I was doing so much because I had these big matches I wanted to be ready for. Fatu being one of them. And I was doing about an hour of stairs every morning without fail, and sometimes going back for a second round in the evening. And I was dropping all this weight, and I started to realize, like, man, I'm getting pretty close to like bodybuilding levels. So most people, when they prepare for a bodybuilding competition, they'll take anywhere from 16 to 20 weeks of preparation. I did it in 4 because I was just kind of already close to it from doing all this wrestling training. So I was just kind of just decided to dip my toe and see how it went. I got second, which
Nice.
means I guess I got to do one more because at some point I have to get that first place trophy.
Right, right. So I talked to actually Cesar Duran a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about just who would be able to break through from wrestling. And you talked about John Cena earlier. Do you have aspirations to continue on with Hollywood and acting and things?
I
You have a dream role?
I don't necessarily have a dream role. I feel like if like something like He-Man got reprised, I'd be knocking on the door. That being said, there's been a couple times over my career where I've been involved in very minor acting projects, just because a friend of a friend knew someone who needed a buff guy with long hair, and I get a phone call, and the next thing I'm flying out to do a commercial where so I've done a couple minor things, and I've enjoyed it, and I think it could easily be a natural transition. I feel like I could, adjust fairly well to that. That being said, it's not a focus I have in my mind at the current time. I'm really bad at like capitalizing on like certain things that I should, like, my girlfriend's always like, oh, you should be doing a YouTube channel, you should be printing more merch, and you should be doing this, and get on TikTok and all these things that I just like. I don't stick my hand in all the cookie jars. I'm very like one track mind. I'm like, I have this big wrestling match coming up. I'm going to train 100% and focus on it. I have this bodybuilding competition coming up. I'm going to kill it. I want to record this album with my band. I'm going to do this. Like, I have a very hard time multitasking. That being said, as my career, starts to enter the later stages, I'm in my 30s now. It might be something to start thinking about.
Awesome. And lastly, you talk about matches coming up. How would you kind of say this match is different than, your guys' past run-ins together? I mean, you've been on so many different occasions in different kind of environments, but this one, of course, has that big fight feel once again. A lot of experience. You guys have had your respective experiences, but how do you kind of go in? What can fans expect from this one compared to the others?
Well, knock on wood, I'm not going to break my ankle in half in the middle of the match this time.
Little
But I mean, it's just a matter of growth. Like, first of all, there's the big fight feel because it is a singles match. It's for the World Heavyweight Championship. Doesn't get bigger than that. But the matter of the fact is, like, we have not faced each other in a year and a half. We've had a year and a half to develop as wrestlers, as men, as people, and I know I needed that time to you kind of learn what it's like to be at the top of the mountain, how to carry myself, how to wrestle, how to be the guy, and now that I'm there, now that I know the role, I understand it. I don't want to let it go. But I know during the last year and a half as well, Jacob's been hungry. He's been growing. He's been evolving. So you're going to see a different match. You're going to see a better match. You're going to see guys who are in their absolute prime, like when we wrestled, the last time at Fightland, Jacob had been champion for a while, but I think that was like his first time at the top of like a major company. I had never been at the top of a major company, and now we're both those guys in the industry. You talk about who are the cornerstones of MLW. Only two names are coming up: Hammerstone, Fatu. And then on a broader scope, you talk about like you see it all the time. You search our names on Twitter, where are the guys people are talking about? Oh, is AEW going to sign them? Is WWE going to sign them? Are they going to go to Japan? Like our names are always in that conversation because we've earned it. We've worked up to that level. So we're those guys now. We're not aspiring young wrestlers. We have cemented ourselves at the top, and we are going to fight like we are at the top. So it's going to be a different match. It's going to be an incredible match. I'm going to put my money on this being the best match of my career up to this point.
You talked about, people AEW being interested, WWE interested. How do you kind of take that? I mean, at this stage of your career, where do you look at long term with MLW?
I look at it day to day. I have a contract to fulfill. I'm never gonna be one of those guys who starts crying and bitching for the Twitter fans to help get me out of my contract. I signed a piece of paper. I knew what I was signing when I signed it. As long as they keep up their end, I'm going to keep up my end. And then as far as what happens on the other side of that, there's so many factors that go into that. Yeah, I've heard whispers of other people being interested, but as for right now, that might not even, it might as well not even be there because I'm focused on doing the job I'm doing right now with MLW. I got a lot of work ahead of me with that company in particular. Um, as far as I'm concerned, I still have quite the legacy to grow. I want to be the longest title holder. I want to be the first time multi-time world championship holder. I want to take that belt over to Japan. I want to do some more stuff there. So I still have a lot of chapters left to write in the book of MLW. It's always a huge compliment to me when I hear fans wishing I would show up at their favorite promotions or when I hear that other promotions are interested in me. But it's kind of, at this point, it's kind of irrelevant information because I have a job to do and I'm going to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the time. Of course, this isn't even a pay-per-view match. This is on Reels TV, which is, the biggest platform MLW has had. So it's really exciting to see that this match is kind of taking center stage with, like you said, two the pillars of MLW going one-on-one. You can't get any bigger than that. That's on the March 21st episode of MLW. And then, of course, next month, April, I believe the 8th, you got Battle Riot coming up. So, with Raven involved. So that's really cool. I thought he was just announced. So a lot of great things coming with MLW. Alexander, you want to let people know, you mentioned not being big on social media, but you want to let people know how they can follow you?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Alex Hammerstone. On Facebook, Alexander Hammerstone. I keep up to date with everything MLW. And like you said, we're on Reels. Next week is the match. And if you do not have the actual channel on your TV, there are ways to stream it as part of an app. I believe for a free 7-day trial. So do not miss this match. It's going to be like I said, I'm promising you the best of my career, maybe the best of Jacob's career, maybe the best MLW has ever put on TV. But do not miss this match. It's going to be incredible. And then keep up to date with everything MLW because we're coming at you hard with some good quality content for the rest of the year.
No doubt. Thanks again so much. Good luck and congrats on everything.
Thanks, Scott. Take care.